In 2000, he moved to Hilton Head Island, his wife's home. In the Low Country, Carlos continued working as a naturalist, guiding kayak trips from the marshes of Hilton Head Island. In 2005, he joined the Coastal Discovery Museum, and in 2007, he received a master's degree in Earth and Environmental Resources Management from the University of South Carolina. As the manager of natural history at the Coastal Discovery Museum, Carlos conducts many varied nature programs and manages the Karen Wertheimer butterfly enclosure. He runs bird watching trips in Costa Rica and recently did one with Wild Birds Unlimited where a number of Audubon members participated. He'll be running another trip with Wild Birds in May of next year, and we'll provide some information about that for those of you who are interested.
All right. Well, a lot of you know me since I've been here quite a while by now. So I did this presentation last year. It was kind of like an idea we had, and what we did was we had some carcasses on the field, and we started staking carcasses like 2 weeks before to get the vultures used to the carcasses, so that we'll do this presentation and go out and see the vultures. And it sort of worked. The vultures came and ate the carcasses, and right before we walk out, when I was doing the presentation, there were a bunch of them there, and when we walk out, they flew away. But some people came back later and saw it in the following days, and Chacon has got wonderful photos of them and bald eagles, and some people got videos. So it was quite a show, but it didn't work the way we planned it. So we decided not to stake carcasses again, because after all their effort, they did not help. That here's the presentation that I put together for that event that we did last fall. And it's basically about the American vultures, the vultures that are found in the American continent. They are the ones that you all know that are found here, the black vulture and the turkey vulture. And then the California condor that is also found in the US, and a few other species that are found in South America. The king vulture, the greater and lesser gel-headed vulture, and the American condor. So those are it. Those are the species of vultures that are found in the American continent. They are not related to the old world vultures, the ones that you find in Africa and Europe and Asia. So they are called vultures because they belong to the same role in nature. They scavenge and find dead animals and eat them, but they're not really related. I mean, they're birds, so they obviously are related, but they're not on the same group, they're not in the same family. They belong to very different groups. There's a big decline of old world vultures, and right now there's a lot of concern about that because apparently a lot of them are eating carcasses of cattle that have been injected with certain chemicals that eventually will kill the vultures. So there's a lot of concern about that. There's a lot of history about those vultures in the old world. Some of them were used as a way to dispose people. Like they would have dead people in a special kind of like chimney, if you wish, for the vultures to come and eat them. And it was part of their culture and so on. Nothing like that had ever happened here, as far as we know. But they are interesting. So I'm not going to talk about the old world vultures since we don't have them here, but it is interesting to know that they are in decline, and the reason why they're in decline by eating carcasses of animals that have been loaded with chemicals. So we have black vulture that you all know. It's a small size vulture when you compare with the others, 3.5 to 6.6 pounds. And they're smaller in the tropical lowlands of the American continent, 25 inches length and 57 inches of wingspan. The turkey vulture is a little bit smaller, 1.8 to 5.3, and similar wingspan and length, but again, a little bit smaller. That's the reason why oftentimes turkey vultures are displayed out of carcasses by black vultures, and that's a common thing to see. You find it's common knowledge that black vultures actually follow turkey vultures, and once the turkey vulture finds a carcass, they can go out and bully it out. And that did happen when we had a carcass here. Like the turkey vultures were feeding, as soon as the black vultures land, turkey vultures were pushed at the side. They're just waiting there for the black vultures to be known to continue to feed. So interesting that they're similar, but you can tell them apart. And as you look at the profile when they fly, the turkey vulture has that white edge that makes it very easy to tell apart from the black vulture. And they are in different genus, so they are related, but they're not too closely related. And they also behave somewhat different in many ways, and we'll discuss those ways. So both species lay 1 to 3 eggs, and they have 70 to 90 days of incubation. And both of them feed their young for about 8 months, and they are monogamous. They like to nest in shelter areas on the ground or abandoned buildings. And depending on the season, they might start nesting earlier or later, depending where you are. So in Ohio, they might start as late as March. In South Carolina, March. In Florida, they might start as early as January. So when the weather is pleasant. As far as I know, I only have here 1 nesting report in our area around here, and it was a nest found by Marianne Peoples, who they have a private island that they in one of the rivers, I think it's the Combahee River, and they found a nest on that island in among the bushes. But I know that in other places they have nested in old barns and places like that. Nothing elaborated, no sticks, nothing built, just a little depression on the ground or the floor in a concealed area where the eggs might not be found. So the turkey vulture, basically the same, a little bit less incubation time, 24 to 40 days, also long feeding time up to 8 months, and similar nesting sites. So that's an actual nest in that hollow part of that tree. You can see the egg on the inside. But they could do it on bushes. They don't have to have anything above them. They could be just in between the bushes. And again, nothing very elaborated. So both species are abundant and they're not threatened. And in the 1800s, they were considered beneficial. So people actually didn't kill them or not necessarily protect them, but they were going after them. Through the 20th century, the attitudes changed, and they were killing vultures by the thousands, and they were on the climb. And then in the mid-20th century, DDT started affecting them as well, and poisoning animals that had been killed with lead bullets and were eaten by the vultures, and eventually the vultures will die. Same thing happened with bald eagles and some other animals that can be affected by lead. So to the 20th century, they declined, but in the late 20th century, they started increasing in population again, and the black vulture, all the way through the 70s, increased to the point that we have up to 20 million vultures now. And it also expanded its range. It increased its range in North America, all the way to Missouri, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New England, and Ohio. So, and I was trying to insert a video of the increase from previous times to today, but it didn't work out. So, but it is in a larger area than it was before, and we don't really know why, but some people theorize that it might have to do with climate change. It might have to do with warmer winters. So that's the black vulture world range in the American continent, and that's the range today in the US. So you can see they go through the entire American continent, or most of it, except for the very cold regions of the south and the north. Turkey vulture has a slightly larger range, covers most of the American continent except the very far north, and they also migrate, which the black vulture don't really migrate as much as the turkey vulture does. Turkey vultures migrate when all the other hawks migrate. So most of the turkey vultures that are found in that yellow area will move south, and even vultures from part of the southern part of the US will move south all the way to Central and South America. And you see them migrating in large numbers. It's like a river of vultures going across the sky. It could be thousands of them, especially in areas like Central America. There's something that is really remarkable when you look at migration of vultures, and for that matter, birds of prey, hawks, and falcons, and so on, because they move from North America to South America, and they have to cross that little narrow area, which is Central America. So they really funneled through. So in Central America, there are many spots where you can see these humongous numbers of hawks. I remember on one of the trips that I did to Costa Rica a couple of years ago, I was in an area and we were looking at birds, and I saw this bird flying out of the forest, and I thought if I would have been in South Carolina, I would have said that's a Mississippi kite. But in Costa Rica, you have to wait, and that's what we did. We waited, and sure enough, we saw 600 Mississippi kites coming right after that one, you know, just out of the forest. So you wait and they start coming, you know it is a Mississippi kite and it's migrating. And a lot of it has to happen for this particular migration to take place, which again is the case of the turkey vultures, but also the case of the other hawks and birds of prey. First of all, when they go through the funnel, they need to suppress all their territorial instincts, because now they're shoulder to shoulder with other individuals of the species, which normally here they don't do that. They're, you know, they have their own territories. Second of all, when they move through this funnel, they can't feed and they can't stop to look for food, because you can imagine if you gather all the, say, turkey vultures or peregrine falcons or swan-song hawks that are living in North America and put them here, there would not be enough food for all of them. So they're just flying through. They're not taking time to feed, and they're trying to get to South America when they can't expand their range and, you know, behave as they normally do in North America. This is one of the biggest arguments for conservation of forests in a continuous bridge, if you wish, from North America to South America, because when the birds of prey and turkey vultures migrate through this funnel, if they are hit by bad weather, like storms or rain or something like that, and they're forced to land, they need to land in trees, so that the next day, what they will do is what that Mississippi guy was doing, the one that I just described. They will jump into thermals, rise in hot air, rise with the thermals, and then spiral on the top, as you see vultures doing here, and then get off the thermal and glide down, pick up another thermal, go up. They wouldn't be able to cover this long distance flapping their wings. It would just take too much energy. They wouldn't be able to finish the migration. They have to migrate by using thermals, but if they're forced to land because the weather is bad and there's no trees to land, and they have to land on the ground while they're exposed, and then the next day they will have to fly up to catch up the thermal, and that will take a lot of energy for them to do that. So they can only migrate successfully if they have a continuous patch of forest all the way across this bridge, so that they can land in periods of inclement weather. And it's, you know, been one of the arguments to protect forests in the Central American bridge or isthmus. So interesting facts about vultures: the nostrils are not divided by the septum, so they're perforate. You can actually see through from one hole to the other. And as you pay attention to in a vulture who's feeding, you can see that. It's kind of disturbing a little bit. Straight through. Now, their defense mechanism is quite unique, and I'm sure some of you have heard this. Have anybody ever heard?
They throw.
Yeah. They call it projectile plumage. And it's like, if you think vultures are disgusting and they feed on carcasses, you know, you can add that to the list of qualities they have. You know, it's like, I don't know, I mean, but they, you know, you will defend like, well, they're not that disgusting. That they do this thing, you know, where it's very odd. And I mean, scientists think it might not be really projectile, like they don't really aim that well, but they will dispose whatever they have eaten as they're threatened. And they do that for two reasons. First, it's a good defense, you know, it's disgusting, and they will repel the animals. And then at second, if they're too heavy, they can't fly. So if they have gorge on a carcass and they're loaded and something is harassing them, they need to get rid of that before they can fly. So by throwing out, they are, you know, lighting out. That's also interesting because after heavy rains, you oftentimes follow vultures on the trees just with the wings expand. That's because they're trying to get dry in order to fly. If they're too heavy with the rain, they can't fly either. There's another characteristic that is also a little bit disgusting, which is their cooling mechanism. Does anybody know what they do?
Hey, you're making a
Yeah, they urinate and defecate in their legs. And that's, again, another characteristic that we will find very good. But it's part of vulture behavior. And the urine will evaporate, and in that way, it will cool the legs. It's also been thought that it might also help to kill microbials and other things of the legs. So they pee on their legs. They do not sweat, so they have no way to cool themselves in hot weather. So when the urine evaporates from their legs, it has a cooling effect, and the urine contains properties that kill bacteria on their legs and feet. So it's gross to us, but it helps vultures, and it's called urethrolysis. And other animals do it too. No, not only vultures, but so what is it? Urohydro. Okay, I'll learn that one day. So they have a few natural predators, but they could be eaten by large cats or a large predatory snake. And again, their defense is spontaneous, probably not really projectile, but exhausting enough to discourage predators. And then again, when I just say they need to get rid of weight in there when they fly. So projectile mounting is part of that strategy as well. Now, my friend Matt, who has a critter control business here in the low country, told me this, and then I ended up looking after it because that's very interesting. I wanted to know if it was a folk tale, and apparently it's not. Apparently, a lot of people know and do this. If you want to discourage vultures from hanging out in your house or your property, what they do is they kill and hang a dead vulture. And that's like a signal that will discourage the other ones in the way. Which is odd because, it's kind of interesting, but it also gives you an insight. Vultures are really smart. I mean, they are smart. And I remember a few years ago, I went to California and I went to the San Diego Animal Park. And this animal show, and they have this vulture, and you pull out a dollar out of your wallet, and he flies, and you pick it up and carry it away. And, they can be trained to do all kinds of tricks, and they are used on animal shows because they can be trained. So maybe they're smart enough to understand that signal, obviously, if it works. But it's quite interesting. So so you can see the segment there. And they have what's it called? Nictine membrane, which is their eyelid that they can close to protect their eyes. Members have this, and so they're not used. So turkey vulture, black vulture, similar. But again, the turkey vulture is a little bit smaller. Now, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about this thing that I found when I was doing the research for this lecture, because I found it fascinating. Now, I'm just going to skip through a little bit, but that's a cartoon that came out in the 1800s. That's James Audubon looking at a vulture and wondering. In December 16 of 1826, Audubon gave a formal talk to a group of people in London, and the audience found it very interesting. And in his talk, Audubon was saying that vultures didn't have a sense of smell. Or is it the other way around? Yeah, it might be. Okay, so his point was they didn't have it. And some ornithologists thought that they did have it. And that gave rise to two schools of thought. Some that were led by Charles Waterton, and he was saying that Audubon not to be led by his thought. And then other ones that were led by Audubon, the ones that were following Waterton were called Nosarians, and the ones that were following Audubon were called anti-Nosarians. And so they start this battle to argue about the sense of the smell of vultures. And they start this saga of crazy experiments. And I have some cartoons here just because I thought that vultures are cartoon creatures. They have appeared everywhere, so I just tried to light it up.
So can I ask you something, Carl? This is the old world vultures?
This is the new world vultures.
Okay, this is what are
Yeah.
vultures.
So this cartoon says, just think, here we are, the afternoon sun hitting on us, down on us, a dead bloated rhino under foot, and good friends flying in from all over. I tell you, Frank, this is the best of times. So I just added some cartoons there because I found it interesting too. But so in 1826, Audubon did this experiment. He stuffed a deer skin with straw. Then he sewed the whole thing together, fashioned a deer head, painted 2 eyes on round mounds of dry clay, and then dragged the body to the middle of a meadow and waited. So, yeah, I told you wrong. Audubon argued for the sense of smell, Watertown argued for no sense of smell. So, he waited, no vulture, the vulture came out looking for the doggy ear. They started tearing the stitches, found the straw, didn't went after that, didn't eat anything else. So then the vulture saw a little garter snake, slithering around. He went after it, captured it, killed it, and flew away with it. So Audubon is, okay, they came out because of the view, not because of the smell, obviously, since there's no smell in this stuffed deer. So, another cartoon. Audubon took then another experiment where he dragged a dead hog into a meadow and covered it with cane stalks. It was smelly, very smelly, but invisible. So buzzards were flying about in the sky, but never, not once, came down to eat. Ducks showed up, but not vultures. So this is just drawing doubts to the whole thing. Now take the big burst, Barbie. Never eat a tin, just sit and stir. So then John Beckman started getting into the bizarre experiments, and which he was a Lutheran clergyman in South Carolina, and Beckman used a coarse painting on canvas representing a sheep skinned and cut open, and that attracted vultures.
Wow.
So obviously they were attracted visually, not by the smell. Then he did another even more bizarre experiment where he collected a vulture, blinded the vulture, and I don't know what process he used to blind the vulture, and tried to see if the vulture was interested in food being blind. And it was not interested in food, and not surprisingly died shortly after. Well, like what would you expect? So it was not clear if any of those vultures were turkey vultures or black vultures. That was not written down on any of those experiments. Well, I suppose you're all wondering why I asked you here today. I always wanted to say that. So in 1827, Richard Owens, an anatomist, British anatomist, dissected a turkey vulture and found the former to have a larger trigeminal nerve. He thought the vulture had a well-developed organ of smell, but he couldn't really prove it. He couldn't really say whether or not that it was functional or not, even though it shows on the anatomy of the vulture, in this case, a turkey vulture. So in 1905, Alexander Hill presented a domestic turkey vulture with a saucer of sulfuric acid mixed with potassium cyanide, along with his foot, to mask the smell. Not wonder the vulture didn't survive this period. So, like all the scientists doing all these crazy things, talk about Robin and not only did we arrive late, but they deliberately left his organ donor card. So how did they figure this thing out? In 1959-61, Kenneth Steger, who was a curator of ornithology at the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles, found that kind of like by random experiments, a Union Oil employee told him that the company had begun adding malodorous ethyl mercaptan to natural gas, so leaks could be detected. Those leaks were attracting vultures. So Steger held a mercaptan dispenser device into the Sonoran Desert near Puerto Penasco and released the foul stuff. Turkey vultures came flying tight circles over the test rig. So they were attracted by the smell. The experiment was then repeated in a ranch in Ventura County, and the same results happened. Turkey vultures arrived. So now it's well known that turkey vultures do have a sense of the smell. Black vultures don't have a sense of the smell. And that's the reason why oftentimes black vultures follow turkey vultures when they're aiming at something, because they know the turkey vulture might have found something that the black vulture cannot find. And it is very common to see that behavior in the tropics where there's dense forests and the vultures are flying over the forest. Only the turkey vultures are able to detect the carcass in the middle of the forest. The black vultures can't because they don't have the senses. There are a few other species of what we call vultures. There are the greater yellow-headed vulture and the lesser yellow-headed vulture. Those two species are both on the Cathartes genus, which is the same genus of turkey vulture. It's very likely that they also have a sense of smell. Those are South American species. The lesser yellow-headed vulture made it all the way to Central America, but they did not make it to North America. And they're very similar to each other. In fact, not too long ago, they were considered the same species. They do differ a little bit in length and wingspan. The greater yellow-headed vulture is a little bit bigger than the lesser yellow-headed vulture. And here's where they live. That's the lesser yellow-headed vulture, all the way to Central America. And here's the greater yellow-headed vulture. Again, they're very similar to turkey vulture, but there are, different species in the same genus. Now, among the group of what we call vultures, we also have this animal, the king vulture. And the king vulture, I feel like it deserves to be called condor because it's big and it's impressive and it's beautiful. It's amazing. And we saw one of those in my last Costa Rica trip. And it's hard to ever see them like that. Most of the time you see them up in the sky, way up, but they're easy to see because it's a distinctive shape. There's nothing that will look like it. They're big, like 30 years, 27 to 32 inches, 4 to 7 feet of wingspan, 6 to 10 pounds. It's a massive animal, and they will travel long distances to find big carcasses that they can fit in. It's a very interesting bird. They mature at 4 to 5 years of age. They breed during the dry seasons. If they're on the tropics, it's rainy season, dry season. They are breeding during the dry season. They mate for life, so you find couples of them sometimes flying together. They have one single egg in a hollow tree in the middle of the tropical rainforest, deep in the forest, which is really odd to me because I've never seen a nest of them, but I have seen a mated pair that are going to a nest, and you just see them like going above the rainforest and going deep down into the rainforest in some area, but finding the particular tree would be impossible. And then eventually you see them flying out and then flying back in, and then sooner or later you will see them flying out with their chick. The third vulture that have hatched and is now able to fly. So they nested there. So they nest in these deep, dense rainforests. But when they go out to eat, they go out to open places, cattle ranchers, and open savannas where they can find animals that they can scavenge. So it's kind of odd to me that they rely on this combination of two different habitats: the deep, dense forest where they can nest, and the open landscape where they can find carcasses. They have been immortalized in history. King vulture is one of the most common species of birds represented in the Maya mythology. Petroglyphs of king vultures are found everywhere in Mexico and parts of Central America. They were portrayed as a god with a human body. They thought that they carry messages to humans from the gods. So no wonder it's such an impressive bird. All kind of folk thoughts and things came out of them. And why are they so beautiful? I don't really know. I can tell. But I recently went out of areas in the U.S. They nest on cliffs, and they have also nested in large cavities, in trunks, in giant sequoias and redwoods. They need giant things, either a big cliff or a giant tree in order to nest. And they like to nest high up. You won't find them nesting on the ground, as is the case of the king vulture and the turkey vulture and the other ones. They nest in very high places because they rely on the wind to take off. They're possibly like big gliders, you know, so they need to be in a place where they can get to the edge, jump, and just start soaring right away. They wouldn't be able to nest in a place in the ground where they have to take flight by flapping their wings. Thousands of years ago, California condors lived in many parts of North America, from California to Pacific states, Texas, Florida, and New York. In recent centuries, condors were found in British Columbia, Canada, Baja California, Mexico. In the 1970s, biologists found that only a few dozen condors remain in the wild. So condors disappear for a number of reasons: direct killing, people targeting them, lead poisoning, lack of carcasses, all kinds of reasons were part of the decline of the condors. In 1980, there was a major conservation project launched to protect the condor and stop it from being extinct. So there were studies they made, there were radio transmitters added to condors, and then wild eggs were collected and hatched in Los Angeles Zoo and San Diego Wild Animal Park, and helped increase the population. And again, this is 1980. A few birds were taken to zoos for captive breeding to stop the decline. By the mid-1980s, all the remaining condors in the wild were taken into captivity because it was determined that drastic measures needed to be done, otherwise the species would disappear. So the first condor chick hatched in 1988, and after a few years they realized this project had a future and it could work. So the captive condor had produced more than 100 eggs by 1994. Nearly 20 chicks had hatched in captive breeding centers, and the population grew from 27 birds in 1987 to 161 birds in 1999. They did this peculiar breeding technique that had been done with other birds, where they will take an egg from the bird, and that will induce the female to lay another egg. So normally they would only lay one, but if they lose that egg, they will replenish the egg that they took. They will breed by captive breeders, and they will have these puppets that were shaped and look like the head of the vulture, of the condor, to feed the baby so that he would not imprint on humans. As 2016, the total population is 446. So we're not there yet. I mean, we're not out of the extinction risk for condors, but it's better off than what they were before. So that's the puppet when they were feeding the little baby vulture, a baby condor. So in 1993, the first releases were undertaken in San Bernardino County. In 1996, there were more releases done in San Luis Obispo County in California. In 1996, in northern Arizona, also Monterey. So they were releasing condors in a whole bunch of places where they had been before. 2002, released in Baja, Mexico. 2003, in San Benito County. 2006, the first nesting of wild condors happens here in California after in 100 years. So, you know, this population is in the way to recovery. I mean, they are now nesting in the wild, which is great. So a big condor pair was found nesting in the burnout cavity of a coastal redwood tree. So there are, you know, there's hope for the population of condors. The condor population, wild and captive, has steadily increased, reaching over 460 individuals by 2017, with 170 wild condors in California. So once again, you can see this animal in the wild. I mean, again, it's not out of risk, but it is better out. So this is where they used to be. This is where they are now. So, you know, it's a drastic decrease, but again, there is hope for the future. Now, the last species that I will mention today is the other type of condor that we have in the American continent, the Andean condor. And the Andean condor is even bigger than the California condor. It's the biggest of all, 33 pounds, 10.5 feet in wingspan. It's also a massive animal, a beautiful animal as well. Live all across the Andes, all across all across the Andes, Again, similar to the California condor, it needs those stiff cliffs where he can nest and where he can just jump and glide and looking for prey. So in the 19th century, the Andean condor bred from western Venezuela to Tierra del Fuego along the entire chain of the Andes, but its range has reduced little by little by human activity. Its habitat is composed of open grasslands and alpine areas of up to 5,000 meters or 16,000 feet in elevation. So the Andean condor is also at risk, and it has been in decline over time, but it's not as bad as it is for the California condor. It is, however, considered critically endangered throughout the Andes from Venezuela to Colombia and Ecuador, but it is abundant on the southern part of the Andes. So there are areas where it's still in good numbers, and it's not hard to actually see them when we visit the Andes. So that's what we have: California condor, Andean condor, king vulture, black vulture, turkey vulture, and the two species of yellow-headed vultures. And scientists don't really know. I mean, we think they belong to the birds of prey. They probably diverged from the birds of prey in the past. But they're a group by themselves now, and we don't know exactly at what point or from what particular group of birds of prey they diverge. We don't know if they came from the falcons or the hawks or or any of the other groups. But they're very unique. And even though people find them disgusting and maybe not appealing, I think they're fascinating creatures, and I feel like they deserve more thought and also more observation. I wish at some point I would do that carcass experiment again, because it is fascinating to see them tear apart carcass, and they do an efficient job. I mean, they will take a deer and clean it out in hours if they're not within alive. So they do a functional job. We really actually do. So, any questions? Yes.
Out of London,